Good afternoon. Yesterday was a sad day in American history. Yesterday was a dark day in the history of this great republic. Any day when Americans would have watched their TV and seen a mob storming the United States Capitol would have been a bad day, a horrible day. Any day when Americans saw on their TV the view of the Senate chamber occupied by a mob. Any day when they would have seen on their screen a mob storming into the Capitol, through the rotunda, into the Senate chamber, into the House chamber, and occupying it, would have been a horrible, horrible day. But what was going on in the Capitol yesterday, when the mob did that, makes it a direct attack on the Constitution, on everything that we hold dear. For what was going on at that moment, that very moment, was the process of counting the votes of the President of the United States. A solemn process, a process prescribed by law and carried out with great dignity every 4 years. That fact made this a horribly tragic day. Last night, as I'm sure most Americans were doing, Fran and I were focused on our TV screen watching the images of the Capitol, really in disbelief and in shock. We tried to comprehend what was going on, tried to make some sense of it. And we saw mid-evening an interview with constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley. Turley said something that Fran and I thought was very, very apt, very correct, and something that we all need to think about. And I'll quote, "What we're seeing is chilling for us because it shows a crisis of faith." That is what the Constitution is. It's a leap of faith that we all take together. The people who scale the walls have lost their faith. And the question for our country is, how much of America is now faithless? Faith in our Constitution, faith in the rule of law. That faith has gotten us through a lot of tough times. A belief in ourselves. This faith in the Constitution and faith in the rule of law is what binds us together. We are a nation whose peoples are drawn from all over the world, who have in common, not a common ancestry for all of us, not a common creed, not a common race, but rather a faith in our country, a faith in our Constitution, a faith in our system of justice. We are truly bound together by that. We are truly bound together by a belief in a basic core set of values. The first presidential race that I focused on as a child was in 1960. Richard Nixon, John Kennedy. When Kennedy won, many Republicans urged him, urged Nixon to contest the election, to fight it out, to go to court, believing that the election had been stolen from him by the Democrat political machine in Chicago. Nixon said no. It will divide the country. I won't do it. In January then of 1961, it was his obligation to preside over the United States Senate as the vice president. And it was his obligation, which he fulfilled, in declaring that John F. Kennedy was elected president of the United States. Years later, as a member of the United States Congress, first in the House, then in the Senate, I was honored to be in the chamber when the houses met and the counting of the ballots occurred. I brought my children, Fran and my children, to see it on more than one occasion every 4 years. I did that because I wanted to see them to see our system, our great Constitution being played out, the terms of that Constitution being accepted by winners and losers. In 2001, we watched as Vice President Al Gore, as Vice President, after an election that had gone all the way to the United States Supreme Court, declared George W. Bush to be President of the United States. Now, I imagine that to this day, Gore and many other Americans still believe that he won. Yet, peaceful transfer of power took place nonetheless. Theodore White, in his landmark book, The Making of the President in 1960, described America's success in transferring power peacefully this way. Heroes and philosophers, brave men and vile, have since Rome and Athens tried to make this particular manner of transfer of power work effectively. No people have succeeded at it better or over a longer period of time than the Americans. Early this morning, Vice President Pence, senators, House members once again carried out their solemn duty and made the system work, in spite of what had occurred earlier in the day, when thugs stormed our Capitol building, desecrating and defiling not only the structure itself, but the ideals that bind us together as Americans. They made it work. They did their job. What happened yesterday was devastating. It was despicable. But in spite of the violent attempts to stop our democratic process, to stop an election, what happened last night when our Vice President and Congress returned to the Capitol was a sign of great strength and unity and hope. The system worked. The Constitution held. Congress and the Vice President were not deterred in carrying out their constitutional responsibility. They were not deterred in carrying out the will of the people. And they were not stopped from doing what was right. I thank them for doing their job amidst chaos, violence, and danger to themselves, and certifying the results of the election of our next president and vice president. I want to thank the vice president for his statement earlier in the day that he would follow the Constitution, he would follow the laws as laid out. I want to thank Leader Mitch McConnell. What he had described as the most important vote of his career. I served with him, and he is an honorable man. His speech was an honorable speech. No one cares more about the Constitution than Mitch McConnell. But I thank all the members who were there. President Trump's continued refusal to accept the election results without producing credible evidence of a rigged election has started a fire that has threatened to burn down our democracy. This incendiary speech yesterday, when he gave preceding the march that he gave to the protesters, served only to fan those flames, encouraging the mob behavior that ensued. Yesterday's acts were shameful, and all Americans must denounce them, even those Americans who feel, incorrectly, that Donald Trump won. And so, as has been with every single presidential election in American history, it is time to accept the election results, to accept the will of the people, so we may begin to move forward and we may begin to heal. We need to come together as a people. We need to work together. We must always remember what President Lincoln once said: we're not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, we must not break our bonds of affection. Because our shared bonds as Americans will always be stronger than our differences. What binds us together is so much more than what tears us apart. We must remind ourselves that we are resilient people. We are a strong people. And we are a people who unite in the toughest of times. Right now, we're facing some tough times. Not just about this election. We have other challenges. We're fighting a common enemy across all 50 states and right here in Ohio. And that's the coronavirus. We have challenges in making sure every child in this state and in this country receives a good education. We have poverty to deal with. We have so many other problems where there really are not partisan differences. We have to remember what binds us together. Remember that we're not the enemies of each other. We have enemies out there. These are things that we must do. We must fight the COVID. We must pull together. We must educate our kids. With renewed faith, we can tackle these challenges together, and we can move forward. United States Senate Chaplain Barry Black, and the prayer he delivered early this morning, as our U.S. Senate closed its session following the certification of the votes, should inspire us to do just that, and offers the words that we need to begin to heal. Here is a portion of his prayer. Lord, you have helped us remember that we need to see in each other a common humanity that reflects your image. You have strengthened our resolve to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, domestic as well as foreign. Use us to bring healing and unity to our hurting and divided nation and world. Thank you for what you have blessed. Thank you for what you have blessed our lawmakers to accomplish in spite of threats to liberty. Bless and keep us. Drive far from us all wrong desires. Incline our hearts to do your will, and guide our feet on the path of peace. And may God bless America. Eric, let's look at the numbers for today. You'll see in the slide, unfortunately, that our cases have jumped dramatically. over 10,000, way above the 21-day average. You see that our deaths are higher than they have been. You will see that our hospitalizations are up as well. And ICU admissions, fortunately, are down a little bit. Eric, let's look at the next slide. Again, all 88 counties are well above the high incident level. See the next one. And we start now, unfortunately, Monroe County. Small, little, beautiful Monroe County is now number one. 1,120, so it's 11 times the high incidence level. Thanks, Eric. Let's look at the next slide. This is the slide that is a summary of what we just looked at. Again, we've started to use this. The redder it is, the more cases in the last 2 weeks. Again, every county is very high. The ones who are red are even especially high. ICU has not really changed much. You'll see that the highest area, again, is Eastern Ohio. Highest ICU use is in Eastern Ohio. Again, the darker it is, the higher the ICU use is. I want to talk today about, to give you more details about the next rollout of the vaccine. And let me just look at some numbers here. We're showing today 221,208 of your fellow Ohioans have received the first dose of the vaccine. We are moving forward, and we're clearing up, we think, most of the problems, the technical problems of getting the data in. I think our partners are working very hard. The hospitals are working hard. Pharmacy partners and our local health departments are working hard to get these vaccines in people's arms just as quickly as they can. So let me talk about the next phase of this and where we will be going. And the 1A will, in some cases, continue. For most hospitals, next week, vaccine should take care of their first responders, their individuals who are in that hospital system, who are frontline workers and are dealing directly with people in COVID. We're monitoring this, looking at the numbers, and our team constantly adjusts what goes to each hospital. But next week, some of these hospitals will be finishing up that phase. And so in some cases, portions of the 1A will be concluding. Some of it will continue on, particularly in regard to the second shots that will need to be allocated. So that will continue. Let me talk about 1B and the beginning of it and give you some specifics. On Tuesday, January 19th, vaccinations will be available to those who are 80 years of age and older. We will start with our most vulnerable, where we've seen the most tragedy, the people in this state who have the most risk of death if they get the COVID. That is people in the general population, not people in nursing homes. We're already working that through. But people who are 80 years of age and older. We believe that those individuals are somewhere in the neighborhood of 450,000. We are also, as I indicated last time, receiving about 100,000 for those several weeks, doses per week. So obviously not everyone who's 80 is going to be able to get it that week. But we wanted to set aside 1 week where nobody else could get it except based on age, except those 80 years of age or older. Those receiving vaccines will receive them from, in some cases, physicians, from local health departments, hospitals, federally qualified health centers, in-home health service providers, as well as some of our retail pharmacies. Now, the Department of Health has approximately 1,700 providers already registered to distribute vaccines and will add more. However, when we go to the date of January 19th, not all of these providers will have the vaccine. What we have to do is distribute it through 88 counties. We have to do it in an efficient way. We want to make it accessible, but we also want to make sure it gets out very, very quickly. So as we move forward, there will be additional ones that will be added. But the first, I'll tell you in a moment about the first week. So this coming Monday, we will hold a webinar for registered providers. That will outline our expectations and our instructions for distribution. On Tuesday, those who have been selected to deliver vaccinations the first week will be notified. And they will know on Tuesday that they have been selected to administer these drugs, this vaccination the first week. And they will receive information about the size of their allocation. Now, as I said, there are more providers registered than will initially receive vaccinations, but we will add providers as more vaccine comes available. Again, what drives so much of this is a scarcity of the vaccine. So 100,000 is roughly what we think we'll have for this group the first week. Let me continue on the week. On Wednesday and Thursday, we are asking local emergency management agencies in every county of the state to hold a press conference announcing where vaccinations will be available in their counties and how individuals can receive them. Some providers may require appointments. Some may hold drive-up clinics we can drive through. Some may have walk-in, walk-up clinics. So some you'll have to make reservations for or schedule, some you will not. We expect every provider to clearly state how they will administer vaccinations to eligible individuals. Further, on Thursday, we will launch an online tool on coronavirus.ohio.gov, where individuals will be able to see who is distributing vaccinations in their counties to what eligible group. And the first week will be those 80 years of age or older. Again, as more vaccinations are available, more providers will be added. So, how can you find out about this? You'll see it in your local news media. TV, radio, newspapers will provide that information. You will also be able to look on the webpage of the state and look that up as well. So there'll be opportunity for people to be able to see where it is in your county. Now, vaccines are usually delivered from the manufacturer on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of each week. Sometimes there has been a day delay. We cannot control that, nor can the provider control that. We anticipate those providers that receive their vaccines on Monday, January 18th, will in all likelihood start distributing on Tuesday. Those that received them on Tuesday will begin to be distributed on Wednesday. And those received on Wednesday, we anticipate will be administered beginning on Thursday. So again, that's information that the provider will know. They will know what day they're scheduled to get it. They'll know how much they're supposed to get. And assuming they get it on that day, they will be able to proceed the next day to vaccinate people. But the instructions of how to do that will come directly from that provider, whether it's a health department or whether it's a retail pharmacy or whoever that might be. So clearly, with up to 420,000 people or so, 80 years of age and older, and with only 100,000 doses available for the first week. It will take a number of weeks before those 80 years of age will be able to get their vaccine. Now, every week after that is our plan, and we'll have to see how this goes, and we'll have to see how the distribution goes. But the plan is, and again, it will depend on how much vaccine is coming in to the state of Ohio, which we do not control. We think we know how much is coming in, but we cannot control that. So each week we will add 5 years. So on January 25th, we anticipate vaccinations will open up to those 75 years of age and older. So the 80-year group will still be able to get it. Now we'll go down to 75. Anybody 75 and older, that week will phase that in. The following week, it will open up to people 70 and older. And February 8th, the vaccinations, we hope, will be able to be available to those 65 years of age and older. Now, again, this is going to take some time. The whole group of 1B is about 2.2 million. So when a new age range opens, that just certainly does not mean that vaccinations will be completed for the previous age group. We know they will not. Again, it will take a number of weeks to distribute all the vaccine given the limited doses available. We hope that the number of vaccines coming into Ohio will increase. The week of January 25th, vaccinations will be available to those with severe congenital, developmental, or early onset medical disorders. We will announce in the coming days how those individuals will be able to receive their vaccination if they choose. So we're not announcing that today, but we will. And we will announce how they will know when they will be able to get the vaccination. I mean, we're telling them when, we're not telling them yet where. Again, the week of January 25th, vaccinations will be available to those in that category. More information will follow next week. Then, during the week of February 1, we will begin to vaccinate our school personnel. This week, we are sending forms to be signed by superintendents. And we are asking them if they will agree, if their school will agree to be open beginning March 1st. Now, many schools are already open, so that won't be an issue for them. Many schools have been open, have closed, and are back open. Well, our goal is to have every school child in school by March 1. So we will announce. During the week of February 1, as I said, we'll begin to vaccinate our school personnel. This week, we're sending forms to be signed by superintendents, and we're asking them on behalf of their school to agree to be back in person or hybrid by March 1. And that is a condition. If they sign that, then we will be able to provide them people who work in the school with the vaccine. Again, the justification, the reason for doing this is very simple and singular, is to get kids back in school. We will also be asking schools to send us the number of staff they believe will choose to take the vaccination and indicate if they are already working with partners for vaccine administration. Some schools we know are already working with partners. We just need to know that. If they don't have a partner, then we will help them get a partner for that vaccination. So again, a work in progress, but we will work with the schools. But first we need to know how many of your people who work for you in that school building want to take it, and will you agree to go back to school March 1? Again, many of schools are open already. That's irrelevant then. Basically then, we just need them to sign it. And then, again, the number of people who will, in fact, be wanting to take that. And then finally, to let us know, do they have a partner? And if they have a partner, that's fine. Then we know who the partner is. We work through the partner to get the vaccine to them. If they don't have a partner, we will work with them to get a partner. Again, logistical lift of this distribution is unprecedented, determining recipient groups, population amounts, provider types, as well as identifying individuals to administer the vaccine, assessing storage capabilities is important, handling requirements, awaiting shipment notification and distribution plans from the federal government all have to be worked in by our team. I want to thank our team. They've done a good job for planning this and working on this. So that's the information for today. Let me turn now to the Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciated your comments to open up the news conference, and I just want to add some thoughts to that, if I could. Like a lot of people, when I heard about what was going on in D.C., I turned the television on and I saw our nation's Capitol building being desecrated and our constitutional process for electing a president being suspended. It was just shocking. It felt like something you would see in some sort of emerging third world democracy, not America. But eventually that order was restored. Our sense of American pride was lifted when Democrats and Republicans walked shoulder to shoulder back into the House and Senate chambers and reconvened and fulfilled their constitutional duties, including Vice President Pence, whose name was also on that ballot last November. What I say today, I preface by saying that I have been a conservative Republican all of my adult life. I have taken the oath of office to uphold the laws and the Constitution of this state and this nation 8 times. And as Secretary of State, which is kind of how I come at this today, for 2 terms, I certified 2 presidential elections. And as Secretary of State, I tried to reassure people that Ohio was a state where it was easy to vote and hard to cheat. I wanted people to have confidence in our system of elections because they should. I did the first ever post-election audit on voter fraud and suppression and showed that nobody who wanted to vote was denied that opportunity, and that while fraud existed, it was rare. During that time, there were many voices who tried to undermine election confidence by alleging voter suppression in Ohio, a state where you could vote for a month without ever leaving home. And I said at the time those claims were nonsense and they sowed the seeds of distrust. So it's in that context that I feel a responsibility today to provide reassurance that the presidential election of 2020 was not stolen. That does not mean that election laws and processes used by many states were as good as Ohio's. We do an incredible job here. Taking days to count absentee ballots in some circumstances in other states did give the opportunity to sow seeds of distrust. But there's a difference. There's a big difference between an inefficient process and a stolen election. It is reckless to equate the two. In the final days of his presidency, I asked President Trump to honor the Constitution and traditions of America and ask all who support him to honor that peaceful transition of power. Over 200 years of Americans have done that and given us this opportunity. It's our responsibility to preserve and protect it. Governor, I'll also add, because I know we're still in the midst of a pandemic and the part of recovering for 2021, and the recovery for 2021. The interesting thing in the last couple of weeks, I've had an opportunity to talk with some of the people who were involved in the trial, the vaccine trial. Many Ohioans were 30,000 people involved in some of these vaccine trials. Many of them were Ohioans, were involved in the Moderna and Pfizer vaccine trials. And those that I've talked to learned recently whether they were part of the placebo group or part of the actual vaccination group. And those who learned that they were part of the vaccination group were incredibly grateful and have reassured that after, now having had the vaccine for quite a time, that they all have great confidence in that process. And I want to thank them for those who stepped up and did that. Many Ohioans across the state who did that, helping to build that confidence so that as the vaccine is now becoming available, that we can have confidence in it and that we can get that vaccine and that we can move on to the recovery stage of the pandemic. And then finally, Governor, with the last year, we passed along $50 million of CARES Act money for schools for broadband connectivity grants. And that money was going to expire for expenditure at the end of last year. Fortunately, with the extension we got from Congress, schools can continue to use that money for that broadband connectivity through December of this year, through December of 2021. So it's important for schools and students and families to know that they can continue to get have access to the internet for those classes and for the hybrid model that you talked about. But it's great to know that the opportunity for every school person to get vaccinated is going to be there, so we can get schools, all of them open, so that more and more students can begin to resume full or partial in-person education, which we know is essential to their academic success for many of them. So, Governor, thanks for that opportunity to share those thoughts, and I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Ready for questions?
Governor, your first question today is from Brian Duggar at WTOL.
Hey, Brian.
Sorry about that. I didn't think I was muted. Hi, Governor. Good afternoon. On Tuesday, you said that you wish that you could vaccinate all the police officers, but we simply can't at this point. Now, we discovered that Erie County has vaccinated hundreds of police officers and deputies, and we're hearing of other counties who are vaccinating ineligible people. So, one, does this concern you? And two, what is the state doing to ensure that all 88 counties are abiding by the state's directives when it comes to vaccination order?
Well, thank you for the question. I certainly understand, as I indicated Tuesday, why a very good case could be made for police officers to receive a vaccine now. But anytime that occurs, that means that vaccine is being denied to someone who is in their 80s, someone who has medical problems. We don't have enough vaccines, and we are in a rationing situation. Now, our goal eventually is to vaccinate all Ohioans, and we hope in the not great distant future to include police officers. I was aware of what happened in Erie County. We had a conversation with the department. We have made it very clear to all our providers that they need to follow the order. The order was not dreamt up in some haphazard fashion. These are life and death decisions. They're life and death decisions because we know that the vaccine will protect people. And we know that the older someone is, the more likely they are, if they get it, to die and have a horribly adverse reaction to that. In the hospital, ICU, et cetera. So, yes, that disturbs me. We've gone back. We've made it clear to the health departments. We have made it clear to the hospitals. Now, what we've asked them to do, sometimes when there are some vaccines left over and the clock is ticking, they need to have a place to go with those vaccines. What we have asked them to do is before that day when they're administering them, have a group of people where they can go if, in fact, they need to put those in arms quickly. We do not want to lose vaccines. We have asked them, when possible, to stay within Group 1A, or at the very least, go into Group 1B. So again, it gives them ample opportunity to get that vaccine into somebody who is older, somebody in that Group 1B, if in fact they end up with 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever they end up with. We are constantly going back and forth with the recipients of this vaccine to make sure that we have the correct number of vaccinations. But occasionally it does happen. We get a number that we put it in, and it's much higher than what they actually need. And we have to adjust. And they have to adjust. And we work with them. Our instructions to anyone who is in that situation, if they got any significant number, they're supposed to call the state health department. We have a line they can call. If it's just a matter of a few, again, we ask them to go to 1A and 1B. That's what we've asked them to do. Again, this is all about protecting lives. And finally, every time we go outside that, every time we vaccinate someone who's 35 years of age, who does not have a great risk, or does not at least have as much risk as an 80-year-old, we're bumping somebody. You can see the numbers I went over earlier. We're going a long time to get through 1A and 1B. We got to protect lives.
Your next question is from Jim Province at the Toledo Blade.
I think you're muted. I'm not hearing anything.
We'll move on to the next question. Is from Laura Bischoff at the Dayton Daily News.
Hi, Governor. President Trump alleged election fraud last fall, election day, yesterday. Your critics say that you enabled this behavior by failing to forcefully call him out. How do you respond to that criticism? And if you could offer some thoughts on invoking the 25th Amendment.
Well, first of all, if you recall, President Trump wasn't too happy with me. Did a tweet about someone running against me in a primary. So obviously, I must have said something he didn't like. Look, Laura, I have faith in the system, and throughout this, I've asked people to have faith in our court system. Some people have said, "Oh, it's terrible. They're filing lawsuits." They have a right to file lawsuits. I think you either have faith in the system or you don't have faith in the system. I've said throughout this, we need to have faith in our judicial system. We need to have faith in our electoral system, the mechanism that works. And the good news from yesterday is that the Constitution prevailed, and people followed the Constitution in spite of a mob. Look, I get critics on both sides. You should have seen my, I get email yesterday shortly after I issued my statement. So we got people who don't like what I do. I understand that. But what I've cautioned people all the way through, and what I've said is trust the system. And again, that goes back to my history, my experience throughout my life. My experience throughout my life has been that the political system works. I don't always like it. I've lost 2 elections. I didn't like that. I've had presidential candidates lost. I didn't like that. But the system works, and we have to trust the system. But we also have to just trust the judicial system. And what I've said is let it play out. If there are allegations, when Trump supporters had allegations that there was fraud, et cetera, okay, the answer is take it to court. Prove it. Not that you shouldn't say, oh, no, the courts are closed. You can't go into the court. No, go into court. So I trust the system. Now, the 25th Amendment, that, as you know, is really activated. One way it's activated by the vice president. And when this was written, it wasn't written that long ago, I think the belief was that if there was a situation where the vice president and members of the cabinet felt, because of what they were seeing up close and personal, that there was a huge problem, they had some mechanism, and the Constitution had not provided really that clear mechanism for them before. This provides them with that mechanism. So they are the ones who are the closest. They are the ones who would know when that would be appropriate. I would simply say, though, that we're down to 13 days, if my math is right, until the new president takes office, 12 noon, January 20th. And invoking the 25th Amendment, I think, and again, this is something that people close to it, they have to make those decisions in any presidency. But invoking that is something that we would not want to see happen, because once again, I think that would stoke the fires of people who believe there's a conspiracy, and I think it would lessen faith in our system. So I'm not close to it, can't make that judgment call, but just as a matter of for the good of the country, that seems to me to be something that would cause more division than healing. And we should be at a time now for healing.
Next question is from Scott Hallitz at the Xenia Daily Gazette.
Hey, Scott.
Hey, Governor, how are you?
Good, sir.
Good. First, I send you a belated birthday wishes. I didn't get a chance the other day, so happy birthday. The coronavirus website has numbers of vaccinations by county. And I want to confirm if that number, because there's like in Greene County, right, Patterson Air Force Base gave vaccinations. Kettering Health Network did some at Soin Medical Center. You've got Greene County Public Health doing some, and I guess the federal program through Walgreens and CVS. Are all of those vaccinations part of that number that's on that website?
Scott, they all should be. The one thing I don't know is a federal installation, Ray Patterson Air Force Base. And I will, in fact, I was thinking about that last night. I was going to ask our team to make sure we're hooked in with what they're doing, because they got their allocations separately, did not go through us, not go through the state. And that's true of any federal installation. So I'll get back to you on that. Maybe somebody on our team can call in, and I'll be able to answer that in a few minutes.
Okay, we're going to try to go back to Jim Province at the Toledo Blade.
Jim.
Hi, Governor. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you. We had our own protest at the State House on Wednesday outside in the park area, and there was no attempt to storm the building as occurred in Washington, but we had protests last year in which windows and other property were broken and people were pounding on the windows pretty forcefully. Are you confident that what happened at the U.S. Capitol could not happen here?
No one could say that. No one could say they're confident. As soon as I saw what was happening in Washington, I got on the phone with our team, law enforcement. I talked to Mayor Ginther. We're looking at it. We're coordinating. People who do intelligence are getting the intelligence, as they always do. But we're certainly aware that something could happen. And I would just say to the people of the state of Ohio and people of every state, the next 13 days until the next president is sworn in is a very important period of time. We need to pull together. We don't need division. People want to demonstrate, they can demonstrate. But going beyond demonstrations, attacking people, attacking a building, trespassing is just simply not acceptable.
Next question is from Ben Schwartz at WCPO.
Hey, Ben.
Hi, Governor. I have a question here from a WCPO viewer who is a healthcare worker who isn't employed by a hospital, and despite their best efforts, hasn't even been able to find out where or when they can get a vaccine. So I'm just wondering, are medical workers who don't directly work for a hospital or long-term care facility eligible to get vaccinated today? And if so, how did they figure that out? Or is that a part of like an upcoming?
Ben, they should contact their local health department in their county. And their local health department will compare what they do and what their circumstances are with what the criteria is. I mean, the criteria has been not to vaccinate every healthcare worker, but it has been because, again, we don't have we don't have enough at this point. But it has been to try to cover anyone who is dealing with anybody who has COVID, anybody who's directly front line. A physician or a nurse or someone who's seeing 30, 40 people a day. They're seeing a lot of people. That's significant exposure. So, but again, local health department would be the place for them to go. If they're not part of a hospital system, they should go to that local health department. And we have tasked the local health departments to do a lot of things, and that's to cover that group is one of them.
Next question is from Jim Oddie at WHIO.
Governor, is this threat really over? In other words, is it behind us? What's being done right now to be better prepared in terms of not just the security, the physical security at the State House and in the U.S. Capitol, but also in terms of public policy, what we do and say in public life to make sure that this does not happen again? We get beyond this division here. How do you go forward?
Well, it goes back, Jim, to what I talked about and the quote I started off with from Turley, Jonathan Turley. What you worry about is that the people you saw breaking the windows, going into the Capitol, occupying the Senate chamber, the House chamber, they don't have faith. They don't have faith in the system. They don't have faith in the Constitution. And that's the disease that I think we have to worry about. Yeah, I mean, look, we're going to get through the next, couple weeks. Certainly something can happen. We don't know. But the bigger question, the long-term question, is exactly the right question that you have asked. How do we have more and more people in this country, for whatever reasons, who have lost faith, who have lost faith in the Constitution, who have lost faith in the courts, who have lost faith in our mechanism for selecting a president. What has sustained us throughout our history is that faith in our system, that faith in our process, that faith in our Constitution. And that has enabled us. What the framers put together was this framework, this machine, this mechanism that doesn't run by itself. It has to have all of us working. You saw senators and representatives come together and the vice president yesterday to make it work, in spite of the great tragedy that was occurring around them. When literally, imagine being in the Senate and they're knocking on the door they're trying to get in. I mean, it just is crazy. But that's that disease of the loss of faith in our Constitution. We all have an obligation, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whoever we are, to say this is what brings us together. This is what we have in common. We may have different points of view, ideology, different backgrounds. We come from all over the world. Our ancestors do. Maybe not a lot in common. Many people come here with a different language. But what throughout our history has pulled us together is that faith and belief that there's a brighter future, and that the way we get to that brighter future is through using that system that the founders designed over 200 years ago. So it's a process that we're involved in. I don't have an easy answer. I think it's important for all of us to speak out and say, look, this is the end result. Joe Biden was elected president of the United States. This was not a stolen election. The president and his supporters had the opportunity to go into court. They went into court. They went into court in front of conservative judges. They even went into court in front of judges appointed by Donald Trump. And still, this was the result. We should trust the system, and we should trust the people who work in the system. Doesn't mean we don't want to change things. What's great about this country is we're always trying to change things. We're always trying to make things better. That's the vibrancy of this country. That's the passion of this country. So no one should pull back and not. But the system is there to work it. You can make change through the process. We have the ability to make those changes, and we need to trust the process, work the system, work the process, go push on, change things. do what we should do. And so the people who storm that Capitol, look, they don't like what Joe Biden stands for. They like what that's fine. We've always had that. But they need to work. They need to work the system. Go back, get ready, get back up and fight another day. Go fight another election. Go run people for office, run for office themselves. All those things they can do within the system. That's what we got to get back to. And we got to trust the system.
Next question is from Adrian Robbins at WCMH.
Governor, thank you for taking our questions today. You said that yesterday's actions by the president were shameful. Moving forward, is he somebody that you are going to continue to support? You've obviously been a vocal supporter of his. And is he somebody that you believe the Republican Party should continue to support, especially if he would decide to run again in the future?
Well, let's get one president elected and sworn into office first. Look, I said what I thought. I've also said that I thought that President Trump didn't always agree with everything he did, but I thought he did a good job. I thought he negotiated good trade agreements by and large. I thought he was more aggressive for the United States. I liked who he put on the Supreme Court. I liked who he put on the Circuit Court and the district courts. None of that's changed. But what I said about yesterday is what I feel, and I feel very strongly about it.
Next question is from Kenny Bass at WCHS.
Hi, Governor. Thanks for taking the question. I know that your neighborhood is Ohio, so please forgive me if I'm asking a question that's out of your boundaries. But here in Western West Virginia and Southeastern Ohio, sometimes the lines blur a little bit. So many people are interested in your thoughts. Yesterday, a West Virginia delegate live streamed himself breaching the Capitol with the mob, and was a part of the incursion into the Capitol complex. A lot of strong opinions about that down here. Based on your remarks at the opening of the press briefing, would you weigh in on that? As a member of the West Virginia legislature entering the Capitol, and what would your thoughts be if, say, someone in the General Assembly had done that?
Kenny, I missed the first part. Who did you say was doing what? I missed it. I'm just sorry.
A delegate from the West Virginia legislature who was newly elected and has actually been sworn in.
Look, you gotta believe in I believe in democracy. People elect people; they elect them. He or she, whoever it was, will run for re-election again. People have to decide if that's what they want. That's for people of West Virginia to decide whether or not they like that type of activity or they don't like it. I mean, that's that's all I will say. I've said what I thought about what happened yesterday.
Hey, Governor.
But that individual, that's up to the voters eventually. Voters get the chance. That's the good thing. If he runs again or she runs again, they get a chance. Lieutenant Governor.
Yeah, Governor, if I heard Kenny's question correctly, he said that the member of the West Virginia Assembly broke into the Capitol. And
I didn't hear that.
If those are the facts, and I don't know what the facts are, but I would just say this, that if he indeed broke into the Capitol, elected official or not, he should be treated the same way as anybody else who broke the law. They should be held to account. That's a criminal violation, and they should be treated as such.
Yeah, Kenny, I just didn't hear it, I guess. I apologize. If that's what happened, and I said this last night, anybody that violated the law should be prosecuted. U.S. attorney should prosecute them. I'm sure they're going to. Any case that they can make, that they can get evidence, and there are a lot of pictures were taken there. I think, my guess is you're going to see a lot of prosecutions. So, no, it doesn't matter who he is. He should be prosecuted.
Next question is from Andy Chow at the State House News Bureau.
Hi, Governor.
Hey, Andy.
Yesterday, 5 Republican Congress members voted to object to the election results. Steve Chabot, Warren Davidson, Bob Gibbs, Bill Johnson, and Jim Jordan. What's your message to them about the role that they have in all of this, refusing to accept the results of the election, given the insurrection that happened at the Capitol?
Look, I stated before, Andy, that would not have been my vote. My vote would have been to certify and accept. I did not see, I continued as late as a few days ago to say, look, I'm not seeing evidence. It's not been presented. It's not been presented in court. If there's somebody walks in with new evidence, that's one thing. You always look at it that way. But, I have not, did not see that evidence at all. I think it's abundantly clear that Joe Biden was elected president of the United States. But look, they have to speak for themselves. They have to tell you why they made that decision. I can only tell you what my decision would have been if I had been sitting as a member of the Senate or the House.
Next question is from Dan DeRose at WOIO.
Good afternoon, Governor.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, we like to joke as journalists that we became journalists because we're not very good with numbers. But even I can do the math. If you're saying that your early indications are that you're going to be getting 100,000 extra doses for this new 1B, okay, January 19th, we add in the 80 and up. That's 450,000 people. The next week, 75 and up, and so on. Are you banking on the percent of people that say they just don't trust it yet? Because the numbers just aren't even close to adding up.
Yeah, well, let me go through a couple of things. That's a very perceptive question, and I should have really covered that better. 100,000 is what we think that first week will be. We think the next week is probably 100,000 as well. But those numbers could certainly change. Now, one of the things that's going to happen is, and this is, I always have to stop a minute and think, but we continue for our nursing homes to bank second shots. We don't hold them ourselves. They are held at the manufacturer. But the system, the mechanism the federal government has set up ensures that there will be a second vaccination for anybody who gets a first vaccination. So they lock that in and they separate those. Now, as we move forward, however, the system changes. And as we start filling up the bank, and as we have now almost filled up the bank for nursing homes, for example, that is going to free up more of those. So you're going to see some freed up as we move into the out weeks. We don't know how much is coming in from the federal government. That's why we don't put a number on this at all. And we think that those numbers, we know those numbers are going to increase simply because we filled the bank and we're going to be drawing out of that bank for some time. And so we don't have to fill it anymore. We're filling a bank for something that's going to occur in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks sometimes. So we got the bank filled almost. So once we fill the bank, then you're going to see the numbers that are available for 1B will go up. The other thing that's going to happen is we're finishing out some of 1A. You're going to see some of the hospitals that finish out 1A. Now there's still other places where the 1A has to go, but those will be filled out. What's coming in, for example, that we are now sending the Moderna, we're now sending 70% to the hospitals and 30% to the health departments. So once the hospitals get that filled up, then that's going to free those up. And so that's going to increase it some as well. We also felt that what we did not want to do is have a situation where vaccines were sitting around. So we don't want people to have to stand in line for hours and hours or be in a car for hours and hours. On the other hand, we have a real imperative not to waste any of this and a real imperative to get it out as quickly as we can. So we're creating a situation, yes, where there's a lot more demand than there is supply because we cannot waste one of these. And so we have to make sure the supply is sufficient to draw out every week. And think about this. You have some counties in Ohio that have 14 or 15,000 total population. So in those counties, we still want them to get something. We want them to be enough, and there'll be enough people there to draw it down. But you may have some counties, for example, that only get 100 per week. So it's trying to match that demand, which we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but we know how many people are eligible, along with the supply. And so we made the decision to give 80-year-olds and up, the oldest of our citizens, a 1 week jump, basically, and let them be not competing against any other group for that first week. But on the other hand, we don't want to not put the next group in because we want that ability to continue to draw these down in all 88 counties. So it's a fine line of trying, don't waste any, get it out quick, and don't have it sitting around, and at the same time making it available in some convenient form for the people of the state of Ohio. Look, I would love if we had a lot more of this, and I trust that we will get more of this, but we are where we are today, and we're trying to manage that, get it out, save lives, get the job done.
Next question is from John London at WLWT.
Yeah, Governor, I don't envy you this math thing. I'm kind of stuck on the numbers too here. You want kids back in class March 1st, and you're going to start February 1st with vaccinating staffers, teachers, et cetera. There's 300,000 of them, and at 100,000 doses per week, you got 450,000 over 80 years old. Have you calculated if there's enough to vaccinate teachers and all of the school staff to meet your March 1st goal?
John, we think everybody who wants a vaccine who's in a school will be able to get it by the first dose by March 1. It will not have some of them certainly will not have the second dose. And again, what are we weighing? We want to get kids in school, but we also have got to make some progress on our 80-year-olds, our 90-year-olds, and our 75-year-olds, because that's where the highest liability is. So again, trying to manage scarcity is not a lot of fun.
Next question is from Joshua Rutlenberg at Spectrum News.
Hi, Governor. A second ago, you commented on the 25th Amendment. You said you were against it because of the time and potential consequences. But
No, time out. I didn't say I'm against it. I'm for the amendment. It's there. It has a reason for being there. What I said was it is activated. It's designed to be activated by the vice president, cabinet members, who are those people who are in a unique position to make that judgment. Not my judgment to make. I observed, however, that if that was in fact activated, it will probably, that would pour some more gasoline onto the fire of people who think there's a conspiracy. There are a lot of conspiracies going on. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead. But that's where I am on this issue. So, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's not your judgment call to make, but we're all Americans. We all see what happened yesterday. We saw what the president said. In your personal opinion, do you think the president is of sound mind, and do you think he violated his oath of office?
I've already said what I felt about the president, that he poured gas on the fire yesterday, and that he's kept, as I've said for some time, he's kept this scenario going of a illicit election, but his team has not been able to produce any evidence of that. Early on when we talked about this, again, my reference point is I trust the system, I trust the courts, go to court. Let's see what comes out. It's kind of how I generally look at it. I'm an old prosecutor. Let's go see what the evidence is. Bring the evidence to court. Bring it out. It's not there. We haven't seen it. So, look, I mean, it's not my judgment to make. I'm not a psychiatrist. But what I do know is that we are in a precarious time and we're trying to heal this country. And I'm glad the president said early this morning that he accepted the results. It would be a peaceful transition of power. I think everyone should hear that, and his supporters should hear that. And people who were at the Capitol yesterday should hear that. And I think, all things being equal, you're better off to let the term expire and go another 13 days. And at 12 noon on the 20th, you're going to have a new president.
Next question is from Laura Hancock at the Plain Dealer.
Hi, Governor. I was wondering if you regret being honorary co-chair of President Donald Trump's re-election campaign in Ohio?
Well, I think I've spelled out why I was for the president, and Ohioans by a pretty large margin were for the president. I've also stated very clearly what I thought about what he did yesterday and his failure to acknowledge the fact that Joe Biden was the president-elect. So, I had the reasons I supported the president are still valid. I still believe he was, did those things that I've articulated, which I find to be very important in a president. Courts, for example. So that has not changed. So I've talked about that. I talked about why I voted for him, and most Ohioans did. And at the same time, I've said what I said about what happened yesterday and his continuing failure to really tell his supporters that he lost.
Next question is from Jenna Cisneros at WKRC.
Hi, Governor. Good afternoon, and thanks for your time. Hamilton County Commissioner Denise Driehaus told reporters yesterday that she's, quote, frustrated we haven't gotten more vaccine doses or guidance from the state on plans for distributing them to people who need them. So, Governor, my question to you is, what's being done to get more vaccine doses and more information to health leaders here at the local level?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I went into great detail today when we started this is to really start getting that information out about 1B. If she thinks she's frustrated, I'm even more frustrated. Look, I have to deal with this every day. We have to deal with this every day. We know it's a matter of life and death. We know we've got to get shots in people's arms. We don't have enough vaccine. This is not any conspiracy. I think everyone's trying to get vaccines to us as quickly as they can. Every state is having this problem. It's not unique to Ohio. No one's picking on Ohio. There just isn't enough vaccine. That's the reality. Now, we're lucky. I'm glad we have vaccine. I'm glad we've already been able to, vaccinate the number of people that I gave you that we vaccinated. We're pushing every single day. We're pushing every lever we can to get the vaccine in people's arms. We're working with the incoming Biden administration. We're working with the Trump administration. So if Denise is frustrated, I'm more frustrated. And, because I'm looking at the whole state and I can see what the problems are. So we got to get the vaccine in. But, I can't, pull these out of the air. I can do what I can do. And our job is to make sure that when we get them out as quickly as we can, get them out in a strategic way that's aimed at saving as many lives as we can.
Governor, can I add some context to that if I could? Remember, this was the fastest time period in history of vaccines for developing a new vaccine. Everybody from the manufacturers to all through the supply chain have been working incredibly hard to get us the vaccine. I know we all wish it was more. I think it's really important this question was asked before about numbers. In Group 1B, the group that we're headed into next, there are over 2 million people who will be eligible. And at the start, there's only going to be all we're going to receive is 100,000 doses a week. So it will just take time. And somebody who's on the phone with the governor basically every day for the past 10 months, I can tell you that he pushes, and the team that he's assembled is working as hard as they can to deliver this in as efficient fashion as possible. And I thank them for that effort. I know that when you're not involved in those calls on a daily basis, you may wonder, is everything being done? And I can tell you that the governor is pushing and asks those very questions every single day, is pushing the team to get them done. But we can't distribute what we don't have. And we'll continue to push to make that as efficient as possible. Remember, the selection process that the people that have been prioritized are the ones, coming up in 1B who are the most likely to die without this vaccine. That's why they've been chosen, and we'll get it to them as quickly as it's available.
Governor, thank you. Let me kind of interrupt our proceeding. We do not get or report numbers from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, so they are not part of any numbers, Scott, that you see. Everybody else that you mentioned should be included in there. Sometimes there's a lag of a day or two before it actually gets into the system. So sometimes, if you're on the phone, calling the different places, they'll give you one number. We may not have those numbers yet in our system, but it should be within 24 hours.
Next question is from Justin Dennis at Mahoning Matters.
Good afternoon, Governor.
Hey, Justin.
Could you please clarify the Phase 1B grouping that includes those with severe congenital, developmental, or early onset medical disorders? Are there specific conditions that are considered as high risk from COVID-19 and create a priority for vaccination? And how is the state identifying the people in this group?
Yeah, this is a CDC definition, and I'm going to ask. We will get that to you. Many of these individuals are already known to the health department or known to our Medicaid team. So in many of them are already, we know who they are. Maybe not all of them, but many of them we know who they are. And so next week we'll talk about how we're going to, they will go in the second week, and how we're going to reach out to them. Most of them are going to be reached out to, and we'll try to get the vaccine to them. But we made that decision, again, based on the same basic principle: is who's the most vulnerable, who do we need to protect the most, who's most likely to die if they get the virus. And this is the group that the medical professionals came up with. We don't know the exact number. It's somewhere in the neighborhood, I think, of about 70,000 in the state of Ohio. And these are, individuals who just because of their medical situation could be very devastating if they got the virus, just like it can be devastating for a 90-year-old, 95-year-old.
Next question is from Randy Ludlow at the Columbus Dispatch.
Hey, Randy.
Good afternoon, Governor. You just stated that you believe that most school employees could receive their first shot to allow the March 1st resumption of all in-person classes. It is the second dose, or so the medical officials say, that provide the bulk of the protection or immunity from COVID. Is it safe to send teachers back into student-filled classrooms with only the first of the two shots?
Randy, as you know, that there are the majority of teachers have been back in class at least part of the time. Not all of them have been. We also know this is an individual school district decision. It remains a school district decision. So nothing has been changed. Parents make their own decision. School district makes its own decision, whether completely in person, whether hybrid, whether totally remote. That will not change. What we've heard from some people in the education community said, look, if we had the ability to get a shot, we would be able to get back in school. And so I want to be very plain today that in response to the question, which was a good question, that not all of the teachers will get the second shot by the time March 1 occurs. We think that most of them will, or all of them will. And again, those will be individual judgments that they will have to make, and their schools will have to make based upon those facts. I'll refer to Bruce for a moment. Maybe, Bruce, you can give some insight into what one shot does and then what the second shot does, because that's out of my league.
Thank you, Governor. First, I'd like to reinforce what you said. We need to remember that even without the vaccines, that we have lots of evidence, including the recent evaluation that I shared a couple of press conferences ago that was coordinated by, among others, multiple public health schools in our state, looking at our schools, and that evaluation determined that our schools are very safe COVID environments. You may recall that the rate of COVID positivity among those tested was in the neighborhood of about 3%, much less than the general population. So that's a context I think is important. In terms of the vaccine, while it is absolutely true that 2 doses is very important and it is required to get full immunity, the first dose of the vaccine appears to be substantial, not unlike what people experience after they receive our flu vaccinations. So not the 95% that ultimately is achieved with the second dose, but not insignificant.
Thank you.
Next question is from Jesse Balmert at the Cincinnati Enquirer.
Hello, Governor.
Jesse.
Could you clarify where preschool teachers or other child care providers fall in line? Are they part of this 1B group, or is that happening later?
That will happen later. And again, the sole rationale for vaccinating teachers and others in schools is to open schools, because that has been an inhibiting factor for some schools to open. We are letting them jump the line. They're obviously very valued people, but we have other valued people too. And that is the criteria. So to open our K through 12, which we believe, and I know many mayors have told me, and many others have told me, is a very high priority. You know, we thought that for some schools this would make a difference. It would give them the ability to open the school, and we would be able to get kids back in the classroom, some kids who had not been in the classroom the entire year. And we've heard a lot about, all the damage to kids in learning, mental health issues, lack of socialization, and we feel that it's important to get kids back in school. But that is the rationale for K through 12. And anytime we go beyond that, beyond what we've got listed for 1A and 1B, we're letting somebody push somebody else back. And as you can see from the numbers, we're going to be a while getting through 1A and then certainly a while getting through 1B.
Our last question for today is from Tom Jackson at the Sandusky Register.
Hey, Tom.
Hi, Governor. Happy belated birthday. I hope Mrs. DeWine didn't forget you Tuesday.
Cherry pie.
Governor, cherry pie. Okay, I'm glad to hear it.
Good.
Governor, have you received your COVID vaccination shot yet? And if not, when do you plan to bare your arm and get it?
I have not gotten it, and I know some governors have, and that because they wanted to show people that it was good to get one. We've tried to show that on our video day after day with different people around the state getting the shot, but. I've elected to get mine when it's my turn based on age. So I'm 74, so you can kind of do the math. So thanks, Tom. Thank you all very much. Look forward to seeing everyone back here, barring some emergency. We'll be back on Tuesday. Thank you very much.